Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin. Daha pek çok şey.
Merhaba, ben Zeynep Nur Ayanoğlu.
Merhaba, ben Abdullah Ezik. Zeynep'le beraber hazırlayıp sunduğumuz Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin. Daha pek çok şey podcast'ini dinliyorsunuz.
Bu podcast vesilesiyle 2007'de hayatını kaybeden Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin'i hatırlamak, çeşitli alanlardan dostlarıyla sohbet ederek onun farklı yönlerini keşfetmek istiyoruz. Künyemizi vererek başlayalım. Proje danışmanımız Şayla Nuran, jingle'ımız Ali Peet'in Spring Depression parçasından bir kesit, seslendirme Uluç Esen, ses yönetmeni Berkan Yıldız ve afiş tasarımı Eray Makal.
Bugün daha pek çok şeyin üçüncü konu olarak Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin'in eşi Camila Rocha ile beraberiz. Kendisiyle İngilizce bir bölüm kaydettik.
Thank you for being with us today, dear Camila Rocha.
I thank you for the invitation.
Welcome again, Camila. Let me start with the first question. Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin is undoubtedly a significant figure for you. He holds a special place in your life, whether as a partner or as an artist you've collaborated with. Firstly, how did you meet Alptekin and on what values was this partnership built?
We've met in Helsinki in 2003. It was my first time out of Brazil. Brazil, it's a country like really far away, and it was not easily to travel. And I got this art residency in Helsinki at Cable Factory. So I spent there like 3 months. And in my last week, when I was about to return, I was living in Rio by that time. There was this Turkish artist that was coming from Cuba and going to Indonesia. And actually, I was trying to convince the director of the residency, Irmeli Coco, to not bring him when we would be there, because it was me and another colleague of mine, another artist also from Brazil. And we didn't want to have a man in the studio. So I was really like, can't he come like a week later? Because then, he will have the residency only for him and everything. And then she said, oh no, he's a very, very busy artist. Then I said, well, okay. So he came, and the first scene was it was minus 15 degrees outside. I was struggling with that cold. It was the first time I experienced such a cold. And then there is this guy, with the hair had this crazy look, and he had this athlete t-shirt written Cuba. And I was like, who the hell is this person? Is this the famous Turkish artist? I was like, what is this? And then after 3 days, we were hanging out here and there. But my studio was the closest to the kitchen. And all the gatherings that we would do at the residency was in my studio, was in my place. I also like to cook a lot. So I was cooking. He was also cooking. And we were drinking the wine that was supposed to be for our opening show, before the show opening, of course. So I don't know, we were talking until late night, and after a couple of days we completely fell in love. I think what gathers together was the fact that on my wall I was making, today I realized that, not today, but afterwards I realized that I was collecting. I work with plants and with plant culture. This is very important. It's the central part of my practice. So on my wall, there was this kind of heterotopia of plants, which I call floriculture. So later on, I discovered that he had a work called Heterotopia. And it was kind of similar because it was also in this cloud format with many objects of his interest, so I think that put us together, and also the fact that we really like to receive people and talk and cook together and have this social environment around us. So, and very interesting about people's life, about different cultures. And I think this is probably what made us be together.
Great. As part of this podcast series, we also interviewed with Alptekin friends, and hearing about the impact of Alptekin on them was truly special for us for sure. We listened to different portraits of him as a friend, colleague, or team member. What kind of personality did Alptekin have for you?
He was a very dynamic person. At first, there was, we were deadly in love. So it was all about this love story. We would do anything to meet in a country, and spend some time together. So, but when we were really living together, like when I came to Turkey, it was already 2004 with my life in 2 luggages. Then I got to know him better. And I think there was this very general person, very dynamic. And it was a young soul, although he was much older than me. He was like an 18-year-old boy, which is now the age of our son. So he had a lot of energy, although it was also like this high and low moment, but it was much more high than low usually. And I don't know, it was really dynamic, and we would hardly get bored in a way. And if we would enjoy that moment as well, so we were working all the time, basically. Like we were always thinking about work in our daily life, in the objects we would find, in the talks we would have, or like in the simple way of cooking the tea, or, so it was very inspiring in a way. And sometimes it was also 2 individuals with a very strong personality. It was also like this, learning how to deal with these limits, like he was single for a long time. And then when we got together, there was all this learning about how to live together and to create together and to receive together. We became like a duo, I think.
It's great that you mentioned you were trying to become a duo, because this following question is about that. Throughout Alptekin's artistic career, there are numerous artworks that he created both individually and collectively. You are also one of the artists who produced with him. How did you decide to engage in collaborative work with Alptekin, and what approach did you have in joint projects?
Well, as I said, since the first time we had similarities in, like, I work in a totally different concept, and he too, but the way we would create things, the way things would be inspiring was usually very similar. Like the source of things would be very similar. So I brought, he was using a lot of the analog cameras, and I was already using digital cameras. So I introduced him the digital camera way of collecting images. And later on, it became a series of videos of still images overlapping each other. This is something that we kind of collaborate together. So I think like most of the time, we were feeding each other in a way. Like I did a show in Vasa, in another residency later on. And I took a barn inside the gallery and show, like some videos of mine. But we're also doing the barn research group, which became his Venice Biennial piece. And sometimes like we were going to Australia for another residency, and we did this project called Catching Up, which was like we were going to the houses of people and collecting items from their walls and putting inside the gallery. So it was a way of getting the people of that town or village, because we did a series of those works, inside the gallery and make them part of it. So I was doing the recording, so I did a couple of movies or videos on that. So for me, of course, I was always trying to catch the plant side of it, like the plant stamp, the plant pots and this and that. But of course, like the way we were choosing and the way he would put together and organize the things on the wall later on. I mean, I think it was always like coming and going, like the way we would interact and merge each practice, like I think it was very fluid, and it's hard to separate, oh, I did this or he did that, like I think as we were living together, it was merging, both stories.
Beyond collective production, the dialogue you had with Alptekin, whether about everyday conversation, art, philosophy, literature, or life, must have influenced both your artistic understanding and perspective on life, and of course his as well. In this context, were your individual artistic path shaped by personal dialogue, interact, and diverge?
Yeah, I think I kind of answered that inside the last answer. But again, like it was a lot about daily life. It was a lot about experiences. It was a lot about talks. It was a lot about enjoying moments of enjoying life, moments of just observing. There were moments, like we were just sitting and taking pictures of people on the beach, and he was doing his series of videos afterwards with that, and I was doing a series of images and also videos. I think we were both like working at the same time mostly, although like we did have a space. We had a studio called Loft, but we would mostly work at home, and that's something that I still do. Like I have a room inside my home, either in Istanbul or in São Paulo. Like I still work at home because it is a lot about relationships. It's a lot about perceptions of the other and the other, like in front of what you're observing, like it's when he says, like he has this famous text called, "I'm not a studio artist." And I think I'm also not a studio artist, like I like to walk outside and see how people relate to the plants, how they put plants on the pots, how they relate to the trees on the streets, like, and he was also doing that from his perspective. So I think it was a very prolific moment, like the years we've been together, either for his stories or for my stories. Of course, like he had all this philosophical background, so sometimes he would introduce me some books or some text or some quotes, and that would, make my pieces more deep and more understanding philosophically. But, like it was always dynamic, emerging collaboration, and that I continue bringing into my own work. Like even now when I do a couple of shows, I always collaborate with people from different backgrounds or professions, because I think that makes the work stronger, and that creates like bonds that brings more life to the work and more realness to the work. And I think he was also perceiving that.
Let's talk about depression, which is like a building block for Alptekin's work. He often introduced himself as a depressive artist. How did depression impact his life, and how did this unique experience of depression manifest in his creations? Because he speaks of the transformative power of depression, how it turns into joy through art.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of that before we met, so I can't relate to those works. Mostly, those depression works, they are really early on. Afterwards, I think the work became more about people and relations with people and so on. So in the personal daily life, of course, there would be high and lows, but because we had a very dynamic life, we were constantly traveling, And then Marino came into the picture, and that was so like, it was a pure joy for us, not only for me, but also for him. So there was hardly a room for real depression. Like, I didn't catch him in that, sometimes when I would come to Brazil and he would stay in Turkey or whatever country he was, probably he would go under it. I think it was something that he was experienced more individually. Of course, sometimes during, producing some major pieces, he would also experience that, but it was never like falling into depression that much, because we had this full life. And also with the birth of our son, things kind of changed. He was constantly sad about or complaining about the way that the country was going. Turkey, he was constantly worried about it. So that sometimes I would get him crying because he found, lots of poems of the Ottomans, and then he would cry because, that didn't exist anymore. He would deeply feel sorrow for that. So those were the moments. But overall, I didn't experience a very low moment of his. I think I experienced in his last years that we spent together, it was not much about depression. It was more the swinging mood, between being low after a show or with some conflicts during the production of a show, or some relationships in the art world. But that we all have, I think actually the arrival of our son in his life changed that perspective a bit.
As a final question, gallerist and art gallery based on Istanbul, Turkey, now represents Alptekin, and also an Alptekin group exhibition created by Pelin Ural taking place there. What can you tell us about the exhibition process, and what other project can we expect in the near future?
The exhibition, well, I think it's great to make an exhibition again in Turkey. It has been long. It's a new place. It's our first show at galleries, and we are all very excited about that. I think the way that Pelin is approaching is very interesting, because she's bringing this collaboration that he did throughout his art life, which was so important for him. He did it with me, he did it with all these other artists. Not all of them will be part of the show. We are probably leaving some of them out, but we try to bring together most of more representative of it. So it's a show about how we would understand him. I think how we would feel him in our lives, in our artworks, etc. So I think it's going to be very interesting, because usually we do shows only as a retrospective with his works. So this time is about how we, the artists around him perceive him. So I'm very excited about that. And we have a couple of shows in the horizon. We are producing some work that were not produced yet. So that's also going to be very exciting. But for that, I'll keep more quiet and wait for things to really settle. But it's really nice to have the chance to do this continuation, of his works. I think there is something about his work which is I experienced throughout all this time, which is whenever country I would bring it, either here in Brazil, because we did many shows after he passed away, here in Brazil or any country in Europe or in Sudan or in Albania or in weird countries or mainstream countries. It can relate anywhere. His work is globally understood, it's not something national, it's not something local. It talks about the world, like the planet, like anywhere, like the politics that he speaks about belongs to any city, belongs to any place. So this is very nice, and it's such an opportunity to be able to continue, with this, show his work around, and it's privilege, I would say. And now that our son is 18, I hope at some point he will also enjoy this and be part of it. And I think we have a nice future because his work is timeless and placeless.
For sure. Camila, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your contribution.
I thank you.
Thanks again, Camila. Bugün programımızda Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin'in eşi Camila Rocha'yı ağırladık. Bir sonraki bölümde sanatçının kütüphanesi ve arşiviyle ilgili olarak Saltan Sezin Romi ile olacağız.
Daha pek çok şeyin sonuna geldik. Bir sonraki bölümde görüşmek üzere. Hoşçakalın.
Hoşçakalın.
Hüseyin Bahri Alptekin. Daha pek çok şey.